Harvard's 1990 summary report for an education department investigation into complaints of racial discrimination determined that Harvard did not discriminate, but it did find that sometimes those comments aren't complimentary and feed into racial stereotypes about Asians. For example, one wrote, "He's quiet and, of course, wants to be a doctor."
What? That's racist. Of course. That's kind of the equivalent to saying that about black people. This is kind of a stereotype. This was just extremely racist.
This process has always been shrouded in secrecy. But a lawsuit brought against the university and a trial where a lot of new documents have been introduced as evidence are shedding light on this mysterious process. And we've got the documents.
Oh, brother.
Sorry I'm late. Scoot over. So in addition to spending a lot of time in a Boston courtroom, we've been analyzing these documents, and there's a lot of interesting stuff in here. But first, let's tell you how we got where we are.
The trial recently started, and it's based on a lawsuit that was filed 4 years ago by a nonprofit group that accuses Harvard of intentionally discriminating against Asian American applicants. Harvard has denied these allegations, and it's pushed back against the lawsuit by saying it evaluates each applicant as an individual and looks at a whole host of factors that matter much more than the applicant's race.
One thing about the Ivy Leagues that always, fascinated me is that the majority of the people who apply, in my opinion, well, I'm not even gonna say apply. How do I say this? Ivy League is like the top of the top academics in the country or in the world. Ivy League. So I would assume that the majority of people who got into these schools were already super smart, because what are the prerequisites? A 1550 SAT, 4 point whatever GPA, 15 extracurriculars, class president, sports varsity. It's just, I would just assume everyone who got in was like on that level, or at least the majority was on that level. So when it talks about like discrimination and stuff, honestly, I never thought it would be like a super big deal, because I just assumed like everyone who got into these schools was like smart. Like, it's Harvard, who they don't let in people who don't deserve it, right?
Harvard considers about 200 factors. Did your parents go to Ivy League schools? What percent of your neighborhood speaks English? Are either of your parents deceased? What percent of your high school is below the poverty line? Normalized academic index quadratic multiplied by indicator for positive norm.
What does that even mean? Wait, what? Wait. Normalized academic index quadratic multiplied by indicator for positive normalized. Okay, I don't even know what that means. What?
Index quadratic multiplied by indicator for positive normalized academic index.
Seriously? Of all the admissions factors Harvard
Quadratic.
considers, there's one in particular that's been especially controversial: the personal rating. This is Harvard's guidebook for its admissions officers, and it gives them guidelines for how to rate applicants on different criteria, including the personal qualities like courage, leadership, kindness, integrity. They evaluate that by looking at applicants' essays, at their teacher recommendations, and at their alumni interviews. While some criteria have more detailed information, like the academic section that explains each number rating, the personal rating is pretty vague.
Personal, outstanding, very strong, generally positive, bland or somewhat negative or immature. What? Questionable personal qualities, worrisome personal. What does this mean? Okay, I understand outstanding, and I even kind of get very strong. Like, you're strong academically, you have a strong will for success. Generally positive, okay, I don't really know how to quantify that. Like, what does that mean? If you have a strong will for success and you're already an outstanding student, I don't really know what generally positive. Okay, you have a good personality, I guess. I don't know. Then number 4 to 6 gets kind of weird. Bland or somewhat negative. Questionable person. Okay, this is extremely vague. I don't know. Hey y'all, make sure y'all subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe.
Some of them are somewhat subjective. Very strong, bland. There's even worrisome personal qualities. And the reason why this is relevant to the lawsuit is because the group suing Harvard has said Harvard's own data shows Asian American applicants have the highest academic and extracurricular ratings, but the lowest personal ratings.
Very strong. Then there's this, which is the interviewer handbook from the 2013-2014 admissions year, and it goes into slightly more detail about what attributes Harvard finds particularly attractive. It calls these distinguished excellences. Among other signs of exceptionalism, the school advises interviewers to keep an eye out for personal qualities like unusual effervescence, charity, maturity.
What does that even mean? Unusual effervescence. What does effervescence mean? I never even heard that word before. Effervescence. What? Oh, vivacity and enthusiasm. So basically how lit you are, like how entertaining are you? Like how funny, how lively are you? How would this be relevant to, I don't know how this would be relevant to academics. Maybe if you was like trying out to be in like a movie, or you want to be a YouTuber or something, but you know, if you try to get into Harvard, what?
Strength of character. The handbook also says that it values positive leadership skills and creative ability in writing, art, or performance. In addition to assigning numerical scores, admissions officers and alumni interviewers can also write short prose comments giving their impressions of an applicant. This 1990 summary report for an education department investigation into complaints of racial discrimination determined that Harvard did not discriminate, but it did find that sometimes those comments aren't complimentary and feed into racial stereotypes about Asians. For example, one wrote, "He's quiet and, of course, wants to be a doctor."
What? That's racist. Of course. That is the equivalent to saying like he's loud and of course wants to be a basketball player. That's kind of the equivalent to saying that about black people. This is kind of a stereotype. He's like, oh, of course you want to be a doctor. And he must be a doctor. Who cares?
Another said that the applicant, quote, comes across as the hard worker rather than the really outstanding potential scholar.
And in a recent court filing, the plaintiff said Harvard's admissions officers still make comments like this, describing Asians as, quote, smart and hardworking, but uninteresting and indistinguishable. Harvard's admissions dean testified at trial that these comments are not representative of the admissions office and that he, quote, abhors stereotypical comments. As the trial moves forward, we will keep you updated and you can read our stories on...
Yeah, this was just extremely racist. Like, when I'm listening to it, and you know what's crazy? Like, if you're an Asian American or you're just an Asian person and that's your culture, I don't know the culture, but I'm just speculating at this point, so bear with me. If that's your culture and you were raised to like behave a certain way, like you can't really change it. Like you would just be manipulating the system if you came like, hey y'all, the same way if like you're black or you're white, if you just have a certain culture, like it's just your culture. Like I'm just naturally a little more like expressive when I do YouTube videos. That's just how I was raised. Like I can't change it whenever I want to. And it's the same way with Asian Americans or Asian people who are trying to go. And for the Board of Admissions to say, oh, of course you're just quiet and hardworking. Of course you just want to be a doctor. And you having these vague personality like quizzes. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's kind of, it feels wrong. It feels wrong. I have to look more into it. I really do. Because I do think if you're trying to get into a school such as Harvard, it's so competitive that of course you need to take, you know, traits other than education in, because it's just so competitive. Like everyone there is smart. But I don't know, man. This just feels wrong. Education should always be number one in my eyes. But anyways, I don't run no Ivy Leagues. Whatever. If you have any suggestions for me, comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on this video, and I'll see you on the next one.